Hello, everyone, and happy week one. Welcome into Inquire Live at Gameday Central. Today, we are coming to you live from the press box here at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, where the Eagles will kick off the 2023 season against the New England Patriots. I'm Eagles beat reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Josh Tolentino, and I'm pleased to be joined by my fellow beat reporters and co-host of Gameday Central, Olivia Reiner and EJ Smith. Olivia, you and I flew up here yesterday. Are you all settled in? Are there any pregame jitters, nerves, excitement? Week one finally here.
There's just a lot of excitement, ready to see some regular season football. I feel like we've been waiting for what feels like forever, but I guess it's really only been about a month. Lots of preseason, lots of fun to follow along with the team then, and now it's time for the real thing.
Time for the real thing. EJ, with your blessing, I'm going to reveal here that you had quite the trek up here to make it to New England. All our viewers back home should know that. How are you feeling here in the press box at Gillette Stadium, ready to go?
That's right, Josh. Yeah, I had a delayed flight from we'll leave the airline unnamed, but delayed deep into the night. I scheduled a very early morning Amtrak, so shout out to Amtrak for getting me here on time in one piece. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to be here. They tried to keep me away, but they weren't going to. I'm too dogged of a reporter to not make it to this game. So, yeah, no, definitely excited for the regular season to kick off here.
There you have it. We have the Inquirer's A team ready to bring you all the coverage here on Gameday Central. EJ, throughout the season, we'll be coming to you live every single game before on the road, at home, to tell all of our viewers, subscribers, what's the latest Eagles news. EJ, where's the best place that they continue to find us?
Yeah, Josh, inquire.com/Eagles Game Day is where we're going to be throughout the game, giving you our analysis and our insights, really what we're able to see from the press box. And we want that to be a two-way conversation. If you guys have questions, if you have comments, maybe something the broadcast mentioned, we really do want you to, comment in there, and, it's going to be more of an interactive thing. So, throughout the game, like I said, you can do that. And then some of the comments will even go in a segment later in the show called What You Said, and that's really one of our favorite segments where we can kind of chop it up on whatever you guys want to talk about. So once again, that's inquire.com/Eagles Game Day.
All right, guys, what is the latest with this team? Let's jump right into it. Coming off that super loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, these Philadelphia Eagles, the reigning NFC champions, will kick off the 2023 season today in New England. Guys, as you look at this roster, it's arguably one of the best constructed rosters, with general manager Howie Roseman and his rising stars of the people that support him in the front office, led by quarterback Jalen Hurts, coach Nick Sirianni. A lot to discuss, a lot to analyze, but just generally, EJ, what are your expectations for this team? It's almost as if it's time to run it back, is a popular saying with this team. The goal, obviously, here is to win it all in 2023.
Yeah, it's well documented how hard it is for teams that, make it to the Super Bowl, especially teams that come up short, to make it back. So, obviously the schedule gets harder. The Eagles had really, remarkable injury luck last year. They had all of their 22 starters available for the Super Bowl, and, they kind of picked up right where they left off from that. We'll get to that later. I don't think you can expect the health luck to really extend throughout this season. Even Howie Roseman has said that, it'd be naive to think that, that they're going to have all 22 starters available for most of the season. And, like I said, the schedule gets harder, but if you look at it, I think that the picture in the conference sets up favorably for them. I still think they're one of the most talented teams in this conference. They have one of the best quarterbacks, one of the most deep rosters. There's a lot of questions that, they're going to have to answer over the next couple of weeks and months. But I do think, if you look at the special section, you see I had them going to the Super Bowl again. When I started looking at the season and taking measurement of everything, I think I was a little reluctant to do that because, again, the history of teams making it back to the Super Bowl is really, it's a tough road. It doesn't happen very often. But again, when you look at this situation in particular, there are reasons to believe that they can have another really, really successful season.
Olivia, EJ dropped his special section story. I'm going to plug yours in here. If you haven't checked it out, inquire.com/Eagles Game Day. You wrote about Jalen Hurts, who signed a 5-year contract extension worth up to $255 million. He's, one of the highest paid players in the league, certainly the highest paid player in the franchise history. What are your expectations going in to this season for Jalen Hurts? Specifically, really what you wrote about, how he labels himself as a triple threat quarterback now that he has this contract. How is he going to follow up his MVP runner-up season?
The outside expectations are high for Hurts coming off of his runner-up MVP accolades, I suppose you can call it. I mean, the expectations are high. I think with young quarterbacks, all young quarterbacks throughout the league, the question is always, what's next? What are we going to see next? And outside of a few established quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes is probably the only active quarterback who doesn't get those questions of like, what else is left for him. So Hurts, coming off of all the success that he had last season, our expectations should be, well, maybe, that should be enough. But ultimately, we want to see more. We want to continue to see him stretch it in his game in all 3 areas of his game, as he defines as being a triple threat through his IQ, his passing, his running. And that was pretty much the gist of the story that I wrote. That, thank you, Josh. I hope everyone has checked it out, or go over to the Inquirer's website to check it out as well. But talking about, well, what can we expect from Hurts in his 3rd year as a starter? Will he, especially coming off of his injury against the Chicago Bears last season when he was injured on a designed run, will we expect to see just as many designed runs for Jalen Hurts this year? And I think the consensus, at least outwardly from the organization and also from some experts at the position, Michael Vick, I spoke to for the story, the consensus is that they should just let him continue to be him. And you don't want to try to dull what makes him special. Injuries can happen wherever, whether he's running the ball on a design play, whether he's scrambling, whether he's standing in the pocket. So just trying to avoid that probably would not make the most sense. So that being said, what is left for the offense this season? Will they continue to have the same success as they did last season, being a very heavily reliant on RPOs? Perhaps today we'll get a little bit more of an answer toward that. So we'll get to see some more. But yeah, Hurts definitely high expectations going into this season, and we'll see where he can continue to grow.
EJ, let's break down today's matchup really quick with the Eagles, with the Patriots, and let's stay on the offense. The offense retains 9 of 11 starters, a change there at right guard with Cam Jurgens stepping in, and the running back situation, very fluid with Rashad Penny inactive today, but they've got DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott expected to split those responsibilities out of the backfield, and they're matched against a Patriots defense. You talk about this Patriots team and the stage of the franchise that they're in now. Tom Brady is going to be here today to be honored by the team, but they're not quite at that stage where they once were, over these past couple decades, almost in a rebuilding type phase. And especially if you look at the division that they're in now, very, very competitive there with the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets. But the Patriots were very good in stopping the run last year. They were top 5 run defense. We discussed Hurts, we discussed the offense. What's your take on the expectations for the offense going into today's game?
Yeah, last year's performance against the Detroit Lions kind of like is lingering in the back of my head today. And the offense played pretty well, but I think the effects of the Eagles not playing so much in the preseason does kind of linger through this first week, especially. It takes a little while for them to kind of knock the rust off. And, this New England defense, like they've got names that you'll recognize, and they're coached by Bill Belichick. They're a good group, and they have an identity. Like you mentioned, they're really stingy against the run. They have a really versatile secondary. Jalen Mills is a guy that Eagles fans are familiar with. He can play safety, he can play corner, he can kind of be deployed all over the place. And I think the Bill Belichick, you always hear it is like he's going to take somebody away. And I think with the Eagles offense, what's interesting is that, it's not clear who Bill Belichick would have circled on his, whiteboard or chalkboard, whatever he's using. He probably is a chalkboard guy, I would guess, old school. But, you don't really know who's going to circle. It might be A.J. Brown, could be Devontae Smith, could be Dallas Goedert. Could be Jalen Hurts in the running game, in addition. So, I think you'll see a lot of, they call it cover one double, where it's a double team on one side and cover one to the other side. I think you'll see a lot of that. I think you'll see, a lot of bracket coverages and even like specialized matchups. It wouldn't surprise me if they, have somebody who follows A.J. Brown or follows Devontae Smith or Dallas Goedert. So I do think that, like, it wouldn't surprise me if this game has a sluggish start to it because, again, Bill Belichick is no slouch. And he's got some good players on that defensive side. And also, again, like the Eagles didn't really play throughout the preseason. I think that there is a chance that, they kind of have to knock that rust off in the first half.
Olivia, switching over to the other side of the ball, we mentioned 9 of 11 retaining starters on the offense. A lot of changes on defense, a new defensive coordinator there with Sean Desai, a new play caller in the huddle there with Nakobe Dean. He steps in. They've lost, obviously, Javon Hargrave. They lost both of their safeties from last season. So a lot of changes, but they've still got Brandon Graham. They've still got Fletcher Cox. They on the outside at cornerback. They've got Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox in the slot. And outside of the obvious additions, we obviously have to mention the first-round picks: Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. What are your expectations for this defense? I think it's going to, take a few weeks here to get implemented, but I am excited to see finally a real game with Sean Desai. As he disguises all his play calls and, maybe even blitzes a little bit more to the applause of Eagles fans.
Yeah, we'll start to get a few more answers as to what we should expect to see from Sean Desai throughout the course of the season. I think right now we're expecting to see some similarities in the defense that Jonathan Gannon formerly ran. However, he'll incorporate his own wrinkles, and we'll get to start seeing that on game day today. And then, as you mentioned, Josh, yeah, there are some players that are stepping into bigger roles this season. Nakobe Dean, the every down linebacker wearing the green dot on his helmet, the defensive play caller on the field for Desai, relaying the calls out on the field to the rest of the defense. He's had a little bit of practice of that in preseason, but of course also in training camp. Dean had pretty limited snaps. I believe he only played maybe a handful of defensive snaps in one of the preseason games this season. So he's going to get thrown right into it today. And then another player that I'm very curious to see a little bit more of as he tries to take the next step in his career is fellow Georgia Bulldog Jordan Davis, especially as it relates to not only his ability to stop the run, and I'm sure he'll be tested in that department today between Ramondre, especially with Ramondre Stevenson coming off of the season that he had last year, not only on the ground, but also through the air as well. And then additionally for Davis as a pass rusher, can he affect the quarterback a little bit more than he did last season as well? So definitely some question marks on the defense going into today's game. However, there's an opportunity for this defense too to really make a statement against this Patriots offense, especially against an offensive line that is a bit maybe has been in better shape in the past, especially considering their starting right tackle Riley Reif has been placed on injured reserve, so he will not be playing in today's game. The injury, I believe there were at least 3 other starting offensive linemen on the injury report going into today's game. Who knows what could happen up front, but I'm sure Hassan Reddick with his his apparatus, whatever he decided to wear to protect his thumb, he will be ready to go.
Let's keep it right there, Olivia. You mentioned Hassan Reddick. Who's hurt? Who's healthy for this team? Really, Hassan was the most notable player on the injury report throughout training camp. He had thumb surgery, but he's ready to go. He was a full participant in practice this week, and it's worth noting the Eagles, they did lose a couple role players in the preseason to long-term injuries. Zach McPherson, a backup cornerback, and Sean Bradley, a backup linebacker, both contributors on special teams. They're going to be out what appears to be the season. But everyone on the Eagles' active 53-man roster completely healthy this week. Just a couple illnesses there in the cornerback room. But by Friday's practice, EJ, everyone was healthy. You mentioned the health last year. Just what is the significance, especially with Reddick coming back, your boy, sharing a Temple alum, of him being back in the lineup, fully healthy, it seems. Olivia mentioned he might have to wear something on that thumb.
Yeah, not to make a false equivalency here, but us Temple guys, we don't miss week one. Like I said, it doesn't matter if I have to take a train, I'm going to be here. Jokes aside, him missing training camp's not nothing. I mean, I think especially like I'm curious to see how the thumb affects him today. It's never ideal. That's a very hand focused position. I guess most of them are, but especially with the combat that you have to do on the interior and even off the edge, definitely going to be a challenge. But as Olivia mentioned, the Patriots' offensive line is really banged up. Both of their offensive guards are questionable going into the game. So, I do think that the Eagles' pass rush can get home today. And in terms of Reddick's importance to that, I mean, I think he's their most impactful pass rusher. Josh Sweat had a really good training camp and a really good summer. I could see him leading the team in sacks, but, you got to give it to Hassan Reddick right now as the guy who led them in sacks last year. I know that rotation has a chance to be really good this year. I think that the interior rushing rotation, I think Jalen Carter is going to be a big part of determining whether or not they're going to have that same level of production even without Javon Hargrave. But on the edge, I mean, they are better than they were last year. They still have Brandon Graham, they still have Hassan Reddick, they have Josh Sweat, who I think is getting better. And then you add Nolan Smith to that mix. You still have Derek Barnett coming back off the injury as well. So, they're really deep at that position. So I don't think that Hassan's going to have to play a ton today, especially if he's struggling. But I mean, he's kind of the one that sets the table along with Josh Sweat.
EJ, you mentioned Reddick leading the team in sacks, leading the league in sacks. So, including the playoffs, he had 19 and a half, which was actually more than Nick Bosa, who just signed a pretty contract over there in San Francisco. It'll be an interesting conversation probably around this time next year or next offseason with Reddick's status on the team in regards to salary. EJ, I'm going to keep it with you real quick. The inactives list just came out a few minutes ago. Any surprises there on the Eagles?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, credit to you guys. You're reporting earlier today about Rashad Penny. I think that I wouldn't call it surprising. I mean, I think rolling with 3 running backs makes sense. I'm curious to see like what this means for him long term. Whether or not this is kind of an indication that it's not all 4 of those guys in the RB1 spot, like Nick Sirianni has previously said, or if this is maybe they have a game on Thursday night coming up. Maybe they want to keep one guy fresh. Again, like I don't really know which one it is, but definitely a little surprising. And I think that Tyler Steen being inactive is kind of a little surprising. I thought that he came along pretty nicely during training camp, but him being out today kind of indicates that Fred Johnson, Sua Opeta, Jack Driscoll, all those guys are kind of ahead of him in the pecking order if there were injuries at any of those spots. And that's something that I do think is really notable because, the Eagles' depth at guard or even at left tackle isn't quite where it was, last year. I mean, obviously it's a luxury to have Andre Dillard, who was a starting caliber left tackle backing up Jordan Mailata. But, especially if the team doesn't really view Tyler Steen as like a solid left tackle backup. I know Fred Johnson's played a lot of football, but that's definitely a little bit of a step down in terms of left tackle depth. And then even at guard, I think that Steen is going to need to be in the picture at some point there. He's a second round pick. I think it's a little surprising that he's a little bit buried on the depth chart this early.
An expert analysis there from EJ Smith as he breaks down what fans tend to argue about is the inactive list. You sign Rashad Penny, who's got a 5.7 career rushing average, but it's a little money, only $600,000 in guaranteed salary. At some point, we might see him this season. Very curious, like what you said, the long-term effect of that. Even I think it was this week or this past week, Nick Sirianni re-referenced games from the 2021 season when Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell were inactive, almost as if he was hinting that Rashad Penny would be inactive today. So fluid situation there in the backfield. Guys, let's transition over to our favorite segment. It's called What You Said. A reminder to our viewers back home, you can submit your comments and questions at inquire.com/Eagles Game Day, and we'll have a chance to read them during our show in this segment called What You Said. Our first comment comes from Rudy Makula, who says the Eagles should win by at least 14 points. Our defense should smother their offense, and our offense should be able to put up a lot of points. Olivia, on the surface, on paper, this Eagles team, they seem very loaded, specifically on offenses commenter points out. But just so many weird things tend to happen in week one. It's not obviously definitive of what's going to happen the rest of the season. EJ mentioned earlier what happened last year in Detroit there with a scare towards the end. And one stat worth pointing out: the Super Bowl losers on week one on the road, Olivia, 4-16 over the past 20 games. So, history with that particular stat isn't favoring the Eagles, but they should still have enough to get it done. Just, I don't think it's going to be a 14-point plus blowout.
Yeah, I think those trend questions or even those stats are always so interesting. But at the end of the day, this team is this team. They are their own entity. What happened to other teams in years past doesn't necessarily mean anything for them today. So I think looking at their success last season, the Patriots' success last season, past success is the best indicator of future success. So I can understand where you're coming from. A 14-point lead for the Eagles in this game, I wouldn't say that is impossible. But yeah, I think it's certainly they're going to have to stave off this sort of quote unquote Super Bowl hangover. We've been hearing all of the right things throughout training camp from these players saying that what happened in the past is in the past. We're moving forward. We've got our eyes ahead on really the mountain that lies ahead of them to try to get back to the Super Bowl and to try to win it this time. You can't be looking backwards when you're moving forwards, and they know that. So or at least they claim to know that. I think we're going to really discover that as these first few games get going. Will there be some rest early on today, or maybe even throughout the game? That will be a big question that we'll all have, especially considering the fact that the majority of the starters did not play in the preseason. But Coach Nick Sirianni was very firm in his beliefs of we've got a veteran team that, especially behind a veteran quarterback, he said about Hurts, that knows how to do this, and they don't necessarily need the preseason reps in order to be prepared for this game today.
Olivia, you mentioned Hurts. His work dedication is just crazy, and it's been very well documented. But when you see it in person, you and I and EJ were leaving the locker room Friday. And Friday is known as like the quick get out day. As soon as practice, players are in the shower, and like the first thing they do is like grab their phone and go straight to the car. Like, that's their one day that they can get out early because, they have to be in the next day, Saturday, for the travel day. They had a 9 a.m. report time yesterday. So Friday night is their time in the week to unwind, relax. You and I were walking out, and Jalen Hurts is hitting this intense back workout in the weight room. Just a testament to his dedication. Here he is, 2 days later, about to play in a game with a quick turnaround. The Eagles will have the home opener on Thursday against the Minnesota Vikings. So if Hurts is leading your guy, leading your team, a lot of guys in the locker room like their chances. Our next question goes from Hollycat20, who says this game has little importance other than to give us a true look at the defensive play calling and scheme. EJ, I'm going to go to you here. Olivia discussed Sean Desai and Nakobe Dean earlier. A lot of other question marks, though, whether it be, how the rotation is going to work out up front there with the defensive tackles. Obviously Fletcher Cox will still want his playing time. But even on the back end, the entire question mark at safety finally going to be revealed today. Nick Sirianni did not give us any hints on if it would be, Justin Evans, Terrell Edmonds, Sidney Brown, the rookie, matching up with Reed Blankenship. What are you most looking forward to today as it pertains to the defense?
Well, first and foremost, you can't be looking back if you're moving forward. That's a Jalen Hurts level philosophical quote there. Welcome to the beat, Olivia. You're already a natural at it. So, but no, to your question, Josh, yeah, we're going to finally get the answers revealed at linebacker and safety. Who's starting alongside Nakobe Dean at linebacker, and then who's starting alongside Reed Blankenship at safety. My guess right now is it would be Zach Cunningham next to Dean, and it would be Justin Evans next to Blankenship. But I could see those other guys. I could see Terrell Edmonds getting getting mixed in with Evans there. I could see all 3 of them on the field. And then I think Christian Ellis could have a role too. So I think all those guys are going to play. I think that's why this has kind of been kind of nebulous. But in terms of like what I'm expecting or, what the defense might look like, I mean, based off of training camp, I think you are going to see this defense be a little bit more aggressive. I know the Eagles fans are going to love to hear that there might be more blitzing and there might be more, press coverage in particular. I do think that there's I think that the hints from camp are that, there might be a little bit more aggression. more of those things for sure. So, again, today's going to be the real test, but I do kind of, based off of training camp, I think those are the hints that we have.
Kickoff is in an hour. We will finally see what Sean Desai's defense looks like with his new personnel groupings there throughout the field. Guys, it is almost prediction time, but first, let's go to some thoughts on today's game from Inquirer beat reporter Jeff McLane.
Hi, I'm Jeff McLane of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks for joining me here on Game Day Central. Talk about the Eagles opener against the New England Patriots. And you know what? I'm not really sure what we're going to get. First off, because we haven't seen the team in 7 months since they were last playing against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Obviously not the way they wanted to finish it. But, since then, a lot has transpired with this roster, new faces. But, what Howie Roseman has done in terms of keeping a lot of this roster together, I think may be underplayed. And that's why a lot of people are picking this team to go back to the Super Bowl and possibly take that next step and win it. But it all starts here in New England, in Foxborough specifically. And, this is a matchup that should favor the Eagles on both sides of the ball, quite frankly. Yes, it's strength versus strength in terms of the Eagles offense and the Patriots defense. And it's weakness versus weakness in terms of the Patriots offense and the Eagles defense. But I still think that the Eagles have advantages in both of those matchups. Let's start first with the Eagles offense. They've returned pretty much everybody, 4/5 of their starting offensive line. Pretty much all of their skill position players, their top 4 receivers if you include Quez Watkins. There is some change in the running back room. DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny will be the top 2 running backs, but don't forget about Kenny Gainwell. He returns. He'll be in the mix as well. If there's one significant change, it's at right guard, and I think you have to pay a lot of attention to that. Cam Jurgens is a center by trade. This will be the first time he's ever played right guard. In fact, he's never seen a live snap at that position. He didn't play in the preseason with the rest of the starters. So that is going to be an area that I'm sure Bill Belichick will focus on when you're talking about his defense. Now, he's got a lot of talent. Matthew Judon is one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. They have a very strong secondary. And Bill does a very good job of focusing on one key player to take out. But as Nick Sirianni said when he was asked that very question on Friday, who do you stop? A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. There are so many weapons on this team, and I just think it's going to be hard for them to contain them. And I even forgot to mention the main weapon the Eagles have, which, of course, is Jalen Hurts. And it'll be interesting to see how much they use him in the run game, but I still think that the +1 factor is going to be a part of this offense, and it's going to give that Patriots defense fits. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Patriots offense is a bit of a mess, especially up front on the offensive line. They don't even yet know who their starting right tackle is. At least we don't know, but that tells you a little bit of where things stand at that position. And when you look at the Eagles defensive line, that's still a strength on that side of the ball, one that they always have. So many guys that they can throw at you on the edges. You have Hassan Reddick. You have Josh Sweat on the edges, Brandon Graham. They've brought in Nolan Smith, who will be a contributor. And in the middle, while they lost Javon Hargrave, they have Jalen Carter stepping in as a top draft pick. He has looked great in camp. Jordan Davis, last year's top draft pick. A lot more will be expected of him. And you still have Fletcher Cox and Milton Williams. So I think that's where the Eagles are going to win this game up front on that side of the ball. So I'm picking the Eagles. Not much is a surprise here. I think what is a surprise that they're only favored by 3.5, but I think Vegas is looking at, the great unknown. And while I will not discount the possibility that Bill Belichick and the Patriots could pull off an upset here, I think it's going to be the Eagles comfortably, 27-19. And then just real quick, my pick for the season, I have the Eagles going 12-6, getting back to the Super Bowl and just losing narrowly to the Buffalo Bills. All right, guys, that's it here from me. Back to you at Game Day Central.
Thank you to Jeff McLane for his thoughts on today's Week 1 game at New England. Guys, let's get your predictions. EJ, I'm going to start with you. What was your score prediction for today's game only? And we'll get to the season later in today's edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yeah, I had the Eagles winning 28-21. I think that, if this game were at week 6, week 7, I think the Eagles would win handily, maybe by 2 touchdowns. But I think that this week 1 kind of malaise, we saw it last year, and I think that it could kind of linger here on the road. As you mentioned, Josh, it's not like it's some, easy cakewalk for Super Bowl losers to come into a team, come into a game on the road and just kind of roll over a team. So I think it'll be close. I think I could see the halftime score being something that if Eagles fans are panicking about, already writing off the season. But I think ultimately, the Eagles are just so much better than this team. I think especially the defensive front against a banged up offensive line. Mac Jones isn't the type of quarterback that can kind of make up for, an offensive line that isn't able to protect him. I think the Eagles defense is going to keep him in it, and I think the Eagles offense is going to hit its stride. Now, listen, I mean, I could be wrong. Like the Eagles offense could come right out of the gates and score, a couple touchdowns really quickly here. I think they have that type of talent advantage, but I do. I think that they're, this is the unknown of week one. I could see this being a little bit closer than expected.
Olivia, your score prediction for today's game.
Yes. So my score prediction is 28-23. I have the Eagles defeating the Patriots. Pretty much second to what EJ said. Again, not expecting a blowout here just because it is week one. There is some uncertainty on both sides of the ball. So, but that said, Eagles on paper should be the victors in this game. The matchup in the trenches between the Eagles defense and the Patriots offense, specifically along the lines there, that's going to be something to keep an eye on, especially with the Patriots offensive line dealing with some injuries. And are the Eagles defensive line, will they be able to take advantage and get their pass rush going and try to make Mac Jones sweat a little bit back there? I'm sure Josh Sweat will be doing that. not to be too much of a cornball there. So that is my prediction, 28-23 Eagles today.
All right, EJ goes 28-21 Eagles. Olivia goes 28-23 Eagles. I'm taking the Eagles in a 3-point victory, 27-24 for all of the reasons they both mentioned. Guys, coincidentally, we did an exercise in the season preview where we had to go game by game and predict a season record for the team. All four of us, including Jeff, had the team at a 12-5 record that was not planned at all. The four of us obviously predicting that the team has a relatively successful season to push themselves into good playoff positioning. Olivia, where does the season end, though? Are they hosting the trophy? What was your final season prediction?
Ooh, sorry about that. My season prediction here. So, yes, we've got the Eagles. I've had the Eagles going all the way to the Super Bowl once again. I think that was something that quite a few of us, if you go over and read our predictions over on the Enquirer's website, you can glean that quite a few of us had the Eagles making their way back to the Super Bowl this year. Not many of us had them winning the Super Bowl. However, I had them losing to the Bills in the Super Bowl. The Bills have been knocking on the door for the last 3 seasons. I think eventually Josh Allen will put them over the top. Perhaps this is the year. Maybe not. But yeah, 12-5 I think is a safe record coming off of, winning the NFC title and making it to the Super Bowl. It feels like that would kind of put them maybe on the upper end of the range. However, maybe a slight drop back from what they finished at last season. 12-5 is kind of that sweet spot. So that's what I'm going with for this upcoming season for the Eagles.
EJ, your end of the season prediction for this Philadelphia Eagles team.
Yeah, similar to Olivia, I have them making it back to the Super Bowl. I talked about it earlier. I don't think it's going to be a small feat to get back. I definitely could see, a lot of factors playing against the Eagles this year. But when you look at the conference, it's just hard to pick out an NFC team that is going to beat them. I think the 49ers obviously have a lot of talent, but, I still have questions about the quarterback position there. I've got questions about their ability to protect the quarterback position in particular. Maybe they're one of these teams that their defense is just unbelievable. And they can make it to the Super Bowl off of that. But I got questions about the offense, even as good as a play caller as Kyle Shanahan is. So, yeah, I have the Eagles making it back to the Super Bowl, and I have the Eagles losing to the Bengals in the Super Bowl. I think that in these really high leverage games, sometimes like the most explosive offense is going to be the one that kind of carries it. We saw that in the Super Bowl last year. And I mean, if you're just looking at offensive firepower, there's very few teams that can stack up against the Eagles, but the Bengals are one of them. I mean, Joe Burrow is an unbelievable talent, obviously just got paid, and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, that duo is again one that rivals the Eagles wide receiver duo, and they've been building their offensive lineup. That was always my question with the Bengals the last few years is, it doesn't matter if they can't protect Joe Burrow, but unlike what I said about Mac Jones, Joe Burrow is the type of guy who can make up for some of that. And this year they've got more talent up front than they have in years past. Defensively for the Bengals, I trust their defensive coordinator to kind of figure that out. They've lost, obviously they lost Jesse Bates and they lost some talent on that side, but I know it's not going to make Eagles fans super happy that we all picked them to make it just basically where they made it last year. But yeah, I do. I think that again, when you look at the NFC, the conference as a whole, I think it's going to be a doable task to get back. Again, not going to be easy, but I think they can do it. But when you start to look at some of those top AFC teams, it's really hard to be able to project the Eagles to be able to kind of take that last step over one of those teams.
All right, our readers, our subscribers, I promise we will not end on a sour note. I was the only reporter on the staff to pick the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, have them winning over the Bengals. When you look at the offense for many of the reasons that EJ just stated, I mean, it's like game planning for them each week. There are certainly question marks about how the backfield will perform. But that's your biggest question mark when you have all, your top weapons, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. Devontae is going to be looking to get paid going into next season. I think that, there's a chance that he might have a better season than A.J. did last year, which is saying a lot after both of them broke the franchise records in receiving yards and receptions. So I think just so much more potential for this offense to grow. But that's why. Right, that's why we're here at week 1, and we will see exactly how it all plays out starting at 4:25 today with our kickoff. Guys, any final thoughts for today's game? EJ?
You usually ask us, I know we're running long, but we usually talk about players to watch. I'm just going to give you one. And it's kind of a shameless plug. I think Jalen Carter could have a really big game today, again, with the interior line of the Patriots banged up. He's looked so good throughout camp. I could see him, having an emphatic, NFL debut today. And while we're on the topic of Jalen Carter, make sure to go to incar.com/Eagles and read my Jalen Carter piece from the other day. Spend time with him and his family in Florida. Kind of got into the turbulent last 8 months that he's gone through and, kind of how he ended up here and what the next steps are for him. So, be sure to read that and definitely keep an eye on him today because I think he could have an impactful afternoon.
Incredible profile from EJ on Jalen Carter. Just the intro, man. You were in his living room. I don't want to give away too much, but go check out that story at inquire.com/Eagles Gameday as EJ takes you into almost a life of Jalen Carter as he begins his NFL career. Olivia, any final thoughts for today's regular season opener at New England?
I'll use my airtime to also plug EJ's story. It's absolutely worth a read. Perhaps maybe a good halftime story. You'll have a little bit more time to really sit with it, and it's a great table setter for what lies ahead for Carter in terms of him taking that next step into becoming a professional. So highly recommend, and looking forward to, like I said at the very beginning of the show, some real football this week.
All right, guys, it is time to wrap up. Thank you so much for tuning in to Inquire Live at Game Day Central. Make sure you stick around at inquire.com/Eagles Game Day to chat with all of us, myself, EJ Smith, Olivia Reiner, Jeff McLane, and Mike Sealski, reporting live here at Gillette Stadium, where the Eagles will kick off the 2023 season against the New England Patriots, a Super Bowl rematch from a few years ago. For EJ Smith and Olivia Reiner, I am Josh Tolentino. Thank you so much for tuning in to Game Day Central. Happy week 1.